Hello, people. Well, we're back at it and in the studio after a wild weekend of just non-stop jiu-jitsu action. Myself, Howell Teague, Chase Smith, Corey Stockton in the back here to dissect, to digest some of the amazing results, upsets, statistics, and more from a wild, like I say, a wild weekend. First time we'd ever done a tournament here at Who's Number One.
Yeah, and it paid off in a big way. You know, so many favorites were out early, so many wild storylines, emerging prospects. I had such a great time calling the matches, watching the matches, and every division delivered in its own way. You know, I couldn't be more thrilled. Corey, what are your takeaways?
Yeah, I mean, obviously a ton of submissions, right? But the excitement, the energy level, I really like the crowd and attendance. I think that really amplified a lot of the action on the mat. The consolation bracket was a huge thing that we really haven't seen a lot of in jiu-jitsu that I think rewarded us, rewarded the fans. Still a lot to break down from this thing.
Yeah, great point. The consolation bracket was one of the wildest situations we saw all weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, you know, we had day one was the quarterfinals in the morning, semifinals in the evening. And then the finals were scheduled for Sunday night, right? So we had that Sunday morning, and we expected some people to come in, some people to drop out for the third place. But I don't think we expected people to come back as fired up as they were in basically in search of redemption and the opportunity to put some money in their pockets as well, because there was a lot of money on the line. And, you know, we'll get into all that in just a minute, because we're going to do a full rundown of all the numbers that mattered at the Who's Number One Championships. But we got to start off with the champs. We got to start off with the champs, because for the first time here at Who's Number One, we put some title belts around competitors' waists. We crowned 5 champions this weekend: men's heavyweight, women's heavyweight, men's middleweight, women's strawweight, and men's lightweight. And we're going to start off talking about Tim Spriggs, the heavyweight champion. Now, Corey, I think that you actually had the odds for this. Tim was not the favorite to win this division, correct?
Not by a long shot. Tim was actually, according to the odds makers, the heaviest underdog in the heavyweight division. He was plus 4,000, meaning he essentially was counted out.
Somebody made some money on Tim Spriggs this weekend.
Oh, yeah. There's some guys back at Camp Springs, Maryland. I'm sure they're very happy about that fact, because, hey, you know what? Tim likes proving people wrong, right?
I think he relishes that. Yeah, and he did it in a big way, right? And, you know, the odds makers could be forgiven. Tim had basically semi-retired since 2019, and he knew this was a big opportunity when he got the shot and said, let's do it, let's go for it. But still, the bracket was stacked with some of the top talent in the world, including number 1 ranked Kaynan Duarte.
Yeah, let's play this clip right here, because, you know, this is just wild, isn't it? That, you know, that Spriggs came out, and not only did he win the title, 3 matches, 2 submissions, both by heel hook. 1 inside a heel hook, 1 outside a heel hook. Tapping out Hyson Reeder in the first round. He got a decision over Tex Johnson in the semifinal, and then submitted Kaynan Duarte via outside a heel hook in the final. You can see it right here. This is kind of a highlight of the match. So Kaynan was going after his leg attacks, and we were talking about how, oh yeah, Kainan's really been working on his leg game, because, you know, it's been a little known weakness of his in the past. And Spriggs is he's leveled up. Let's put it that way, right?
I mean, he came out fired up, right? He cut one of the best promos ever seen in jiu-jitsu ahead of the final, saying, I'm going out there to kill or be killed. You're going to see a submission, and I think it's going to be me. He was a little more emphatic than that, but he was really fired up. And man, it just oozed on the mat. He was so confident, and once he had this locked on, it was game over. Corey, tell me what you thought about this matchup here.
Yeah, I mean, Tim just looked dialed in. Clearly, it showed. But the heel hook exchange, we had been seeing Kaynan Duarte's heel hook level coming up throughout this year. But I think Tim kind of knocked him back down a peg, especially with this surprise heel hook, and really cashed in on this.
So, you know, I think a little unfair to count Spriggs out completely. Yes, there is the inactivity. You know, the fact that last time I remember seeing him on the mat was very beginning of 2020 in a Fight to Win super fight. That was in Miami. We went out to that in Florida. And but let's not forget, ADCC trials winner, ADCC veteran with multiple submissions, and IBJJF World No-Gi champion. So you consider all that, and so I think that people should maybe be not forgiven. They shouldn't be forgiven for sleeping on Tim, because Tim has always been a very, very dangerous competitor. And it's very interesting that if you watched the show you will have seen that we had Gordon Ryan breaking down the matches before they happened, right? And he called it. He said that basically that Tim had 2 keys to success in this match. He win by 1 or 2 methods, either by guillotine or by leg lock. And it came true.
In a dramatic fashion, and it is definitely another wake-up call for Kynan, right?
Yeah.
He thought maybe he had adapted his game enough to deal with the modern leg attacks, and we can see that he's still susceptible to that.
Got some work to do,
anybody
I
can
guess,
get caught, but it's still a warning sign for him. If he wants to be successful at ADCC next year, he's got to brush up on that stuff.
Yeah, everybody else has been investing that time in the leg game too, right? So it's like the level is, it's always getting better. Well, you mentioned about how Tim cut one of the best post-match interviews. Let's hear it from the Mush Master himself, because man, this was something else. Take it away.
Shout out to my team, Team Lord Urban, Crazy 88. Shout out to my big bro Tai. I didn't really do leg locks like 3 months ago, and then Tai's like, "You got to expand your game, baby." So I did. I took out who's considered #1 in the world right now with a heel hook finish. 2 bonuses. Shout out to everybody that says I don't finish anybody. I just finished the best in the world, and now I'm the best in the world. The old Tim Spriggs is dead. It's the era of the Mush Master.
The Mush Master. We didn't see too much of the mush. Instead, we saw some cranking of the legs, but I love it. I love to see it. Tim, $30,000. What are you going to spend it on?
I'm going to invest it. I might become a crypto cowboy. Who knows?
What's up with the rash guard? After every match, after every victory, the rash guard comes up. What's this about, brother?
I got to show off the abs, baby. I got to show them off, I'm a big fan of University of Miami football, and, back in the day, I used to do the crop top. And, I feel as though as men that are secure in their sexuality, it's perfectly fine to wear a crop top. I want everyone to start wearing a crop top.
Owning it. I love it.
I own it, yes.
Own
absolutely.
it. I love it.
Abs, no abs, don't matter. Just rock the crop top, baby. I heard somebody earlier this week said, whoever wins this is the interim best in the world. Stop the cap. Interim these nuts. If anybody wants to smoke, you know where to find me. Pay up.
Tim Spriggs keeping it real here at the Who's #1 Championship. Congratulations.
I love it, man.
I have the biggest smile on my face watching that. We need so much more of that in jiu-jitsu, right? It gets people really fired up. They love it. They hate it. I saw a lot of people really offended and upset by the crop top. I'm going to go buy one myself.
They don't like the crop top.
I'm going out after this show and picking up some crop tops.
About.
exactly. I think it's great. I think there's so much personality, right? And it's fun to watch. It's engaging. Tim is a great lyricist. Had a lot of podcast experience and stuff like that. Shout out to BJJ Goons. And man, he's going to be the champ. He is the champ. I wonder who's going to defend his title against.
That's the big question. Yeah. That is the big question. He's definitely going to have a target on his back after that, right? But incredible performance, very, very powerful run there through the stacked heavyweight division. Well, moving on through the champs, because we got a couple more to get through. Let's talk about Rafaela Guedes, the Atos black belt, the new women's heavyweight #1, and winning with a submission in the final against Kendall Rusing. We got a clip of this we can play as well, because, man, Rafaela, a very, very physical grappler. And I'll be honest, Kendall, she had her in some moments. She was kind of in trouble because Kendall was on fire. Kendall had a really powerful run through in her first 2 matches. But Rafaela managed to catch the neck, roll it through, finish with this mounted guillotine deep into the match as well, like deep into the match, over 20 minutes into the 30-minute final. That was a really, really solid way. That's a statement right there, right?
100%. You mentioned that the match was even, and you're absolutely correct, right? And it was really fun to watch the wrestling exchanges. And in fact, as earlier in the match, you could argue that Rafaela's best moments were actually on the feet, which is a bit of a surprise against someone that is so experienced like Kendall Rusing in the wrestling arena.
Right.
But that was sort of a do-or-die moment for Rafaela in that exchange where Kendall, if she was able to extract herself from the chin strap and the guillotine threat, was in a great position to pass.
Right.
And it was sort of a do-or-die moment, and as we saw, it worked out great for Rafaela. Corey, talk to me about this match.
Yeah, it's exactly right. It really came down to who was willing to take the risk, right? Rafaela, it was a back-and-forth match. Both women were playing positionally and really not giving an inch. But when Rafaela took the risk in going for that guillotine, putting herself in potentially a bad spot, it ended up paying off. And I think especially because this match went so deep, that risk was really highly rewarded. I think if maybe that had been at the 5-minute mark in the match, would have been a different story, right?
Right. Yeah, I guess there was a lot of mutual respect here. They knew each other well, and I think it maybe just, it took a while, right? The energy bar was kind of going down a little bit the deeper they went into the match, and it really was a case of who would make the first mistake here, I think, because they both looked so strong in their performances throughout the tournament. They both had decision wins in their first two matches, both winning the quarterfinals and semifinals, and there was still a lot on the line, right? $30,000 prize, plus a potential submission bonus, and of course, becoming ranked number one. And Rafaela, she managed to go home with $31,000 back to San Diego. And it's really cool because she said, basically 1 year ago, she just got her black belt. Literally, it's almost to the day, actually, 1 year ago, she was promoted to black belt. And she said she was broke. She was absolutely broke. A struggling grappler, let's say, starving jiu-jitsu competitor. Now, wow, how things have changed.
Absolutely. She said she's gone on vacation, thinking about Hawaii, and
sounds good to me.
It's great to be able to be in a position to reward these athletes for all the hard work they've been doing and putting in a performance like that, like Rafaela Geddes. Well done.
They deserve it, man. They deserve it. Rafaela Geddes, not the only Atos black belt, or excuse me, I should say not even black belt, but not the only Atos competitor taking a big-ass check and a title belt back to San Diego, because Tai Rotolo, middleweight champion, in a very contentious, somewhat controversial, and let's just call it what it was, a frustrating final match against Mika Galvao. We have some clips so we can play a little bit of this because, man, these guys, they have history. They've been fighting each other since they were little kids. They're not little kids anymore. They were the two youngest finalists in the entire tournament. 17 years old, Mika Galvao versus 18-year-old Tai Rotolo. The future of jiu-jitsu has arrived, and it's right here, who's number one. And Rotolo took the decision, split decision, I should add, in a match that was, man, it was tough to watch, and there was a lot of action, but at times, there wasn't a lot of action, right?
Yeah, I do need to review this match again. I called it live, and it was a lot of the same for much of the match. We're seeing the very best moments here in this quick highlight, but what I think we saw throughout this match was two very specific game plans that each athlete had designed for one another that essentially canceled the other person out. I know that's a phrase used often in combat sports, but we truly did see it. And Mika Galvao essentially only wanted Tai Rotolo to try and pass from standing into north-south.
Right.
If he wasn't going to do that, Mika was not going to engage. He wasn't trying to wrestle up. He was simply...
because he knew what was waiting, right?
It's true.
And that's smart because, Tai's arms, that DOS choke is such a dangerous threat. I wouldn't want to wrestle up from bottom either, so...
Exactly. And so Tai was trying to pass and kept basically looking at Mika's possum guard, and he was unwilling to dive into that trap, which was going to north-south.
Again, smart. Why would you? Because Mika is such a strong finisher. I mean, he can pull a submission out in the blink of an eye. So, as you say, it was kind of a standoff, right? They really did kind of cancel each other out in that sense,
but
right?
I do feel like Mika wanted Tai to do one thing, and Tai wanted Mika to do literally anything else.
Right. Good point. Corey, so when we're talking about criteria here, who's number one, when all aspects are relatively equal, then we often tell them that who's pushing the pace and who is the aggressor, that's the decisive factor here. Do you think that it was clear that Tai deserved to take this?
Personally, I thought so. I know that this has kind of been a controversial match, but one of the things that I've been thinking about looking at this match is that Mika Galvao is such a counter fighter, right? He sets traps, he wants you to fall into his trap, and he'll wait as long as he has to make you bite. Tai Rotolo is a stamina fighter. Tai Rotolo wants to wear his opponents down. So Tai looked more aggressive, but he was avoiding that last-minute distance change, that last-minute gap closing, because obviously Mika was waiting for him, right? So tough to break down exactly who won strategically in this match, but based on the criteria of aggression, I think it's obvious that Tai Rotolo was doing more work.
Yeah, a very tough match to watch, and we definitely got a little frustrated at Matt's side, but I'm going to go back and watch it at some point because I really want to make a note of everything that happens and kind of weigh the submission attacks and the entrances against each other and see kind of like, just objectively, because sometimes watching it as a fan or as a commentator, we miss stuff, right? So,
well, you're kind of laser focused, but
right.
as contentious as that final was, we need to discuss a little bit about Tai's run to the title phenomenal, right? Two
Three
submissions
matches,
on
two
the way.
submissions, yeah.
Opening up with a great performance over Johnny Tama in that submission, and then the submission he had over Dante Leon in the last 10 seconds.
One of your favorites?
Was a thing of beauty. Absolutely. We're going to see that a little bit later in a different highlight.
Right.
But,
yeah. I mean, and you know, it's interesting, isn't it? Because the DOS choke against Tama was, you know, that's a trademark Rotolo technique. But he hit an arm triangle variation. It's kind of similar in many ways to a DOS choke or Anaconda. But again, those long arms, right? Tell me a little bit about what he did to Dante.
Well, he just won the scramble, essentially, and it's sort of a reverse arm triangle, is what some people call it. Corey might be able to shed some light on this as he was doing some homework on it earlier.
Yeah, no, it looks a lot like a guillotine, right? But the arm is trapped inside, so it's an arm triangle. Actually, one of my personal favorite setups. I don't have quite the Tai Rotolo capacity here, but it's a great sneaky choke, and it comes on just like a tight arm triangle, which sticks to what Tai Rotolo is best at, right? Those arm in trapping chokes.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. All right, so moving on through the divisions, the 115 pounds, number one in the world, solidified her position as the very best and adds a nice little title belt to her collection. Maysa Bastos of GF Team, the diminutive, shy, the woman of few words, but man, she lets her jiu-jitsu do the talking, and she's pretty formidable on the mats.
Yeah, absolutely a fierce competitor, right? And we saw a very similar scenario, perhaps, of two competitors with very predetermined game plans, right? Maisa's much happier playing off of her back for most of the match, and Grace Gundrum looking to pass on top.
Oh, we got some best moments from here as well. And this is the crap ride. And
is this from the beginning of the match or at the end?
This is from the end.
Okay.
But she used it at the very beginning of the match to get onto Grace's back. I think she had one hook in, but she had a very tight control of the upper body. And she rode that position out for a fair few minutes in the beginning. Then I would say the next 20-something minutes was characterized by Grace relentlessly trying to pass Bastos' guard. And then, as we saw here, less than 3 minutes remaining, Bastos is able to reverse the position, get on top, mount, and go for the arm triangle choke, riding out the rest of the match in that position. I mean, that actually sealed the deal, because up until that point, you'd have to argue that her brief positional control early in the match had been overshadowed by Grace's hustle, let's call it, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we're talking about 25 minutes of work from Grace Gundrum to try and pass the guard. And at certain points in the match, we as commentators were almost pleading, saying, all right, we need a little more aggression from Maysa, or this is not going to work, as she was more or less just controlling from bottom, just recomposing her guard, staying a little defensive. As if on cue, knowing that there was only a couple minutes left, she wrestled up and again never went backwards from that point. Once she was up and committed to trying to pass, she did so successfully, relatively quickly actually.
Yeah, she knows how to put the pressure on.
Straight into mount, as we saw there, and ended the match in a very dominant position. Really strong showing, and again, shows that there was a calculated sort of response to the 30-minute match. Maybe Maysa knew she did not want to hold that position or play on top for 10 minutes. That may not have been her strategy, but she wanted to end the match that way, and it is what sealed the deal.
Pretty crazy to think that Maysa Bastos is the only woman to have beaten Grace Gundrum in the last 7 years.
She's done it twice now.
And she's done it twice. That is incredible. So this was a battle for the who's number one as well, because Grace Gundrum was ranked number 2 and Maysa Bastos was ranked number 1. So it really was a case of like finding out who's number 1, and Bastos was able to emerge the winner. A lot of props, I got to say, big props to Grace Gundrum. She came out here and she had a phenomenal weekend, finishing with an incredible submission, taking the first ever twister in who's number one history. That's gonna, I think it might be a while before we see another one of those. That's a cool record to have. But Bastos, just a very smart competitor, very experienced, but I'm sure that we will see that match happen again at some point in the future. Cool. Tai Rotolo taking the lightweight title belt. The Rotolo brothers, very successful weekend for those guys. Very, very successful weekend for the Atos team in general. They put 4 guys into the finals here at Who's Number One Championship, and they took 3 title belts home. And in total, they actually took $111,000 back to San Diego. If you add up the prize money of all the first place finishers, Kynan second place finish, and the submission bonuses they were able to take. So I hope one of them at least bought Andre Galvao dinner that night, right? Maybe they
probably made that happen, yeah, you would think.
But Cade, much like his brother, was able to go home with 32,000 thanks to the 30,000 grand prize and 2 submission bonuses, but he was able to catch a beautiful submission in the final. And again, surprise, surprise, what was it? Darce choke.
The Darce.
Had to be, right? Here it is.
The way he shot that through was incredible, right? Just the smallest opening, and he knows exactly what he wants. Or what makes Rotolo's Darce so damn good?
I wish I knew. But they set their opponents up perfectly, right? Their opponents always sit up into them. They have it from every angle. So no matter where they are, the Darce is always a threat. And just the squeeze, when they get the bite on the neck, the squeeze is, I haven't seen anybody get out of a Darce yet.
Nobody gets out, but that said, I was impressed by Souza's resilience in that position, because he lasted a lot longer than most people do in that spot. I mean, I got to give him props. Gabriel Souza was one of the standout competitors for me in this entire tournament, because he came hard, he came forward. You know, he had an intensity. But I almost feel like that benefited Cade in this final, because Cade's the kind of guy, he loves a scrap. You know, he loves a scrap, and Souza gave him that, came forward, was hustling after him, and man, the match didn't last that long, and Cade, I feel like he raised his game because of Souza's intensity, right?
Definitely. I mean, I think both athletes thrive on that intensity.
Yes.
But what we saw in this match was a successful implementation of the pressure strategy that Rotolo has used so well, of wearing their opponents down, grinding them down. We saw that as Cade ran around the north-south, Gabriel did get a little tired of inverting, trying to recompose his guard, and he went to turtle. He did it once, kind of got out, and then Cade did it again, and that's when the submission happened.
That's a risky place to hang out with
exactly
the Rotolos,
what Tai Rotolo was hoping would go down in his match with Mika. He's hoping that Mika would kind of break, and that he would allow an opening that he was unwilling to do so earlier in the match. Well, we saw how that would work in a positive fashion in this match here with Gabriel Souza.
It's pretty cool, isn't it, that Cade Rotolo, he scored a Darce choke in his opening round against Diego Pato. Unfortunately, Josh Cisneros was injured midway through his match, or very early in the match, I should say, against Cisneros. He injured his knee. Unfortunately, it took him out of that match. He did come back into third place. But, yeah, Rotolo taking 2 Darce chokes in 3 matches must feel good. Must feel really good. He even said in his interview, so it's such an understatement, he's like, I'm super stoked.
I love those kids. They're so chill, but absolute monsters, really man. Oh my God.
Absolute monsters.
They're not kids anymore.
Monsters.
I keep calling them kids, but they are men. And I think that should be fully clear at this point.
Yeah. 18 years old, now undisputed, number 1 ranked 155er in the world. Tai Rotolo, number 1 185er in the world. They've solidified their positions as some of the very best no-gi grapplers on the planet. And I am very excited to see where they go from here. I think the future is just incredibly bright, and I can just, my mind is spinning with all the potential title defenses that we have in front of us. But those hopefully we will see here in future editions of Who's Number One soon. Now that is a little recap of the champions, I think we should go through some of the biggest upsets, because with 50 matches over the space of 2 days, there was a lot of opportunity for something of everything. We had some roller coaster stories, some triumph, some heartbreak and redemption, but
we had everything.
We had
absolutely
a little bit of everything. But for me, I think especially on day one, the real story of that first day was what we had some incredible upsets, some huge favorites, or if not favorites, at least front runners in certain divisions falling to underdogs, and sometimes in very spectacular fashion. Kick us off with the first one, Chase, because this was monumental.
I think almost everybody, whether you watched it live or just were following on social media, saw a bit of this. Amanda Levy, of course, took out Gabby Garcia in the very first round, and it wasn't even close. Amanda Levy dominated this match.
Let's play this highlight, because we got some of the best moments. And now, Levy, this match started on Friday afternoon when we dropped the bracket at the press conference. Levy she had choice words for Gabby. She called her out. She called her unprofessional. She wanted to know why she didn't weigh in. She thought that it was uncool. And yeah, I thought that it was a risky strategy, poking the bear, so to speak, right? But she came out and she went after Garcia. And as you can see, flipping her over, taking the back and sinking in this deep rear naked choke. I genuinely don't know how Gabby Garcia was able to fight her way out of these positions, but she did it more than once. But man, Levy was on a mission. And she did an amazing job because she had Gabby in bad positions, but at the same time, she was able to avoid getting smashed, which is something that Gabby's so good at doing against her opponents, and not many people are able to hang out in certain positions. But Levy was comfortable there, and she was able to look for those openings and then really put it on Garcia, right?
Yeah, her transitions were so smooth and impressive, and everything about this match was a career best for Amanda Levy. You know, just really, really exciting. Corey, what stood out to you the most about this match?
Yeah, you know, the first back take when Amanda stacked Gabby and took her back impressed me, but this one impressed me way more because Gabby was pressuring Amanda here for a couple of minutes and really looking to pass the guard, and Amanda somehow was able to sneak out the back door and get onto Gabby's back. Another choke right away.
Deep
don't know
as well.
how
Look
she
at that,
couldn't finish
right
it,
under the chin, right?
But it really was one of the most amazing performances of the whole tournament.
We were calling this during the commentary, but you could see the color on Gabby Garcia's face changing because of the effect of that strangle around the neck. And man, I like this as well, you know, so a little bit of the showboating from Levy as well. That, you know, she was so fired up, and the crowd were fired up. This was probably the loudest I heard them all weekend.
I was going to say, I think it really, really was. Besides the finals, this match captured the hearts of our fans here.
She got some moves, that young lady there. So Amanda Levy, huge performance. Definitely the first and biggest notable upset of the tournament, but not the only one. Let's move through. Gabriel Souza submitting Mikey Musumeci in the opening round of the 155-pound division. We have a clip we can play right here because, man, Souza, we talked a little bit about how in his final with Tai Rotolo, he came out super intense, very aggressive, and Tai Rotolo had an answer for it. Souza came out and was incredibly aggressive again, but managed to pass Musumeci's guard, which is an incredible feat when you consider it. But not only that, when he got into the north-south position, he was able to finish him with a choke, making him only the second ever black belt to tap out Mikey Musumeci in a competition. And the first in the lightweight divisions as well, because the first time we saw Mikey Musumeci tapped out was last year at the IBJJF Pans, where he entered in the gi and he entered the absolute division and he lost to Orlando Montero. But this is the first time that anybody in his own weight class has submitted him, especially in a no-gi tournament. So this is a really notable moment, and he was a huge underdog going into this match, right? Souza was not the favorite.
Yeah, this was really impressive to watch, and one thing that stands out to me about the submission is some submissions are kind of a flash catch, right? Like someone just makes a mistake and it's a quick sub. Gabriel really earned this over the course of 15 minutes almost, and it was really impressive to watch him wear down Mikey and pass the guard not just once but twice. Like I said, it was positional dominance first. And then he got the submission, which was not what you would expect from a Mikey Musumeci match. And a real credit to Gabriel Souza for coming in ready, because he was also a late replacement.
10 minutes and 9 seconds into that match. Gabriel Souza was indeed not quite as late a replacement as some. I think he had a solid 3 weeks advance notice to get ready for this. But still, you know, coming in and taking out Mikey. Was Mikey the favorite? Possibly. Was he the number one seed? I think so. He was definitely among the front runners to win that division, and Souza took him out first round. What did you think of that performance, Corey?
I mean, the whole tournament for Gabriel Souza, he really just caught fire, right? He came in fired up against Mikey, showed an energy and a willingness to put himself out there that we don't normally see people take against Mikey. Sometimes people are a little bit more cagey and less willing to fire attacks off of Mikey, but Gabriel...
Well, you got to be careful, right?
Well, apparently not, because Gabriel just went out throwing shots, and eventually one landed, and it didn't take very long for him to sink that choke. And I think he said afterwards that he had only really started working this choke in the lead up to this event.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's interesting. But, you know, this is the other question as well that we kind of we discussed amongst ourselves, is that Mikey's guard is so good. how often do you think that he gets put in those positions in training? You know, how often do you think his training partners are able to pin him with a classic kind of jiu-jitsu control position like that? You know, the north-south. How often do you think he's defending his way out of north-south chokes? And it's that thing, isn't it? That, you know, if you're never in those positions, do you have the technical answers to how to deal with them? And I'm just think that Mikey is so good in so many ways that it takes a really special sort of grappler or just an incredible series of events to put him in one of those positions. And so it's maybe a reason as to why, you know, Souza was able to get the finish once he got into that top position.
Yeah, it's tough to say how and why, but one thing we do know about Mikey Musumeci, even when he wins, he's extremely critical of his performances, always looking for ways to tweak and adjust his game. So there's no question he's already back in the garage right now trying to figure out where he went wrong and make those changes. So I'm looking forward to see what Mikey Musumeci does next, and also where Gabriel Souza ends up next. I think it's going to be No-Gi Worlds in a couple weeks. But
I hope so. I hope so. Another huge upset was the opening round, the middleweight division. This was stunning. This was incredible. And Hillbilly Hammer, Jacob Couch, man, brought in, given the opportunity of a lifetime, grabbed it with both hands, cranked it into a sit. Play this clip right here because this is phenomenal. This is Couch of Pedigo submission fighting. You've seen him on the Daisy Fresh documentary series, and he submitted Roberto Jimenez with an inside heel hook. He found Roberto's weak spot. Yes, you know, a noted vulnerability to the leg locks. No surprise whatsoever that if there was a way to win, that he was doing so with the legs. But man, Couch was all kinds of underdog in this match, right? Jimenez was one of the favorites to win the division. Is that right, Corey?
He was, I believe, the favorite to win this, and Couch was very far down in the biggest underdog in this division. Takes out the favorite.
And he submitted it in less than 2 minutes. Not only was he able to submit Roberto Jimenez, but Couch came back into the third place bracket after losing in the next match to Mika Galvao, but came back into the third place bracket and had a match with John Blank. Lost that one by submission, but Blank was injured and couldn't continue. So he ended up fighting in the third place match against William Tackett and was able to win this one by decision after a very solid 15 minutes of action. So a roller coaster weekend for Jacob Couch, tasting the sweetest of highs, you know, winning by submission against Roberto Jimenez, being submitted himself, but then coming back to get a big win over William Tackett, who is a very, very solid name. And man, I just noticed they put Elizabeth Clay's name on the screen there for a second when he got his hand raised, a little technical error. But Couch, he was all kinds of emotional in this match, and this is a really special moment to witness, right?
Absolutely. You love seeing a guy like Couch just get his moment, right? Credit to William Tackett too for taking that loss on the chin, being a great sport about it, because it was a very close match. And yeah, what can you say about both these guys? They're just the best.
Yeah, I love the sportsmanship as well. Moving on, we got to get things going here, man. There's so much to talk about from Who's Number One. Let's keep this moving. Standout performances from the weekend. I think we'll kick off with Hyson Reeder, heavyweight division, third place finisher. Managed to submit Orlando Sanchez in the final. Let's play this clip because this is an interesting one. And Orlando Sanchez weighed in at almost 300 pounds. The 6'5" Hyson Reeder using this leg entanglement to come up on top. And then once he got the back, man, very, very tight face crank to get the submission.
Yeah, Orlando did not resist very much. Once the arm came across and Hyson put the squeeze on, that was all she wrote. And you can see here, Orlando says, "That's enough for me. I want out."
Look at the pressure on that crank, man. Hyson, Spriggs actually told me this backstage because Spriggs was able to submit him in the first round of the heavyweight division. And it was not an easy match. And he said, man, he is ridiculously strong, like ridiculously strong, and he's huge. He's 6'5" tall, you know. So a solid heavyweight. But Hyson said that the $7,500 that he took for the third place, and also the $1,000 courtesy of our sponsors, Pubs Natural, the submission bonus, That $8,500 there is the most money that he's ever won at one time doing jiu-jitsu. Very cool. Like being able to put money in the athlete's pockets.
Absolutely. Love to be a part of that.
Excuse me. Another standout name. Cole Abate. Man, the 16-year-old from Art of Jiu-Jitsu. This kid. Wow. I mean, it is just... I was practically speechless with his match with Gio Martinez because it was a masterclass of technique in all areas, right?
Absolutely. And we can go ahead and run this clip here we have of Cole. Such a dynamic athlete. And we mentioned this on the broadcast, but there were some eyebrows raised when we said Cole Abate was going to be in this event.
Oh, yeah.
Does he deserve to be there? Is he good enough? Well, I think we have an answer to that, which is a resounding yes. Corey, break down Cole's performance for us.
Cole looked great in his first match against Gio Martinez, which we're watching here. He had a couple of really deep-looking heel hooks, which is not an easy feat to attain on Gio Martinez. But then also kind of snuck out the back towards the end of the match and hopped onto this very nice back take and controlled the match throughout.
Yeah, man, Cole, like you said, Chase, that there was some chatter as to whether he deserved to be among the elite 8 no-gi grapplers that we invited, and all doubts were answered right there in that match with Gio. And then in his next match with Gabriel Souza, the semifinal, because that was a split decision, and I'm not gonna say it was maybe as controversial as the Mika Gabal Tai Rotolo match. It was controversial in a slightly different way because it was about as close as you could imagine. You know that Cole had some really deep submission attacks. You know, Gabriel Souza had some of his own as well. And it was one of those matches, divided opinion, and many people thought that Cole deserved to go through into the finals. I'm not going to make a statement either way. I feel like I need to go back and watch that match again. But to do that, to go 15 minutes with Gio, a veteran of the sport, over twice Cole's age, and then to do the same 15 solid minutes, losing via split decision to Gabriel Souza, the eventual finalist. That is an incredible weekend for a young man whose future is very, very bright in this game.
Yeah, well said. I think we're all looking forward to Cole's return to WNO sometime in the future here.
All right, so another impressive performance. I want to signal here as well. Erin Harp, the heavyweight competitor. We have a great highlight of this. Some of the best moments from the weekend because, man, we saw her in action earlier this year here on Who's Number One, where she had a match with Rafael Aguedes, winning that one by decision. And Erin making a return to the world of professional grappling here this year and on the Who's Number One mats. A lifelong practitioner, a lifelong grappler, growing up in a fighting family, but spent the last couple of years focused on an MMA career. And she had a very, very solid performance, a couple of big wins. And this right here, this match, will just use to illustrate a part of that, able to catch this brutal Kimura. Look at this against Amanda Lowen. But Erin Harp, a series of very strong performances. She lost to Kendall Rusing in the opening round, but really shone in the third place bracket, the consolation bracket, losing in the third place match to Elizabeth Clay, the eventual third place winner. But still, a very impressive performance that we wanted to signal, and taking home that nice submission bonus.
Absolutely. We have another athlete that really stood out for a variety of reasons here, Josh Cisneros, who had, unfortunately, his run in the main bracket cut a little short via injury. Some call it technically a sub due to not being able to continue. It gets complicated and messy, but the short of it is that he unfortunately bowed out to Tai Rotolo due to injury in his second match, but he started the event in phenomenal fashion.
Yeah,
here.
let's take a look at that because this was cool. This is classic Cisneros, right? Because we knew how explosive he is. We knew how he's able to accelerate just in the blink of an eye. And his game, he's so opportunistic with his submissions. Look at this. Damian Anderson, a very scrappy competitor in his own right. And you see the way that Cisneros is able to go from 0 to 100 in the blink of an eye and get onto this armbar. And once he got it, man, Anderson did his best to defend. But Cisneros, Corey, man, he was not going to let that one go, right?
Oh, no, of course, Cisneros, once he grabs hold of something, he knows when he's got it, and he knows if it's his.
Yeah, I was locked out for some time. Damian really had to gut that one out for a second there, but it was too much to overcome. And a real credit to Cisneros for coming back the next day and showing up in the consolation bracket.
Yeah, because I thought he was done. You know, that the knee injury in the semifinal against Cade jumped into kind of like the flying leg scissors, and the weight fell on the side of Cisneros' knee, pre-existing injury as well. And Cisneros was was heavily incapacitated, and yet he shook it off. He came back the next morning, wasn't the same, couldn't wrestle, and yet came and had a relatively competitive match up to a certain point with Diego Pato, unfortunately losing by submission. But the heart on the kid, even just coming back after that, fighting through an injury and coming back into that third place bracket speaks volumes about this kid. And love to see it. Love to see it. Another standout athlete I have to point out here as well is Amanda Tubby Aliquin. Now, she's got the game perfect for who's number one. Aggressive, submission hunter, great wrestling, scrappy, very technical. But I think the biggest question is about where her nickname comes from. Why do we keep calling her Tubby? Hey, we didn't come up with that nickname, okay? That's a family thing. Blame those guys. But that's what she's known as, and that's what she'll introduce herself as. So Tubby Aliquin came out in the 115-pound division, and she had a really, really good run, catching a submission, I believe.
We do have a clip of this, I believe, right here. She really has shown, let's say, in the consolation bracket. Went out early in the main bracket, but came back firing, picking up 2 subs. Including this one over Jessica Khan here. This is the fastest submission of the event.
Fastest women's submission in Who's Number One history as well. I gotta say, that is 42 seconds. It's gonna be tough to break that record.
I think so. Some of them might try, but in any case, Tubby also on her Instagram today posted that she was super appreciative of even having the shot at a consolation bracket, because typically that's not a thing. Once you're out, you're out. So she made the most of that chance and got herself an honorable mention here.
Yeah, that was really cool. I enjoyed watching it, and she's a kind of a little bit of an entertainer as well, right? But we talked about standout performances, and we talked about how Couch had the roller coaster weekends. But the last thing that we want to talk about with Jacob Couch, the Hillbilly Hammer, is about what he did once he was able to capture that third place prize and the $7,500, and he took home an extra $1,000 for his submission against Roberto Jimenez. But just listen to this, because this is this speaks volumes about this kid's character, and he wanted to do this. Absolutely no sort of push whatsoever from his coaches or his teammates whatsoever. This is all this kid, but he wanted to share some money with his opponent, John Blank, because he was so appreciative of Blank allowing him to go through into the third place match after he bowed out due to injury. Here, take a listen to this.
I would just like to offer John Blank $1,000. He beat me in my first match in the consolation bracket. He got injured, so he tapped me out fair and square with a really nice tight reverse triangle, and I would like to just extend an offer of $1,000 of my submission bonus to him, because he wasn't able to continue, and I just feel like it would help him with his recovery, and just be fair to John, because in the best worst way possible, I guess you could say, he kind of gave me the opportunity to go ahead and place third in a top 8 bracket at 185, and I would just like to offer and extend to him an offer of $1,000 to maybe help with the recovery, or I just feel like he deserves it, and it's the right thing to do.
Huge. I think that is a very, very, very professional move from a young man who obviously has a bright career ahead of him, but speaks volumes about his character, right?
Yeah, going above and beyond. Gotta love it. Really great to see. Transcends sport, right? That's something you just want to see from your human being, fellow man. Yeah,
that's cool. It's the values of jiu-jitsu, the sportsmanship, the things that we learn, that sense of community with our fellow competitors at times. Mm-hmm. Corey, you ran the numbers, and I think it's time to do a little statistical analysis of some of the biggest moments from Who's Number One. Let's run through some of the numbers that make the Who's Number One champions, because we have some stats such as the amount of time that they competed, the number of submissions that they got. Let's let the fans know what happened over the weekend.
Yeah, I think it's best to start out with the submission rate at Who's Number One Championships, right? 47% of every match ended in 47% of all the matches ended in submission. 46%.
You know what goes great with substats? Submission highlight. Let's go ahead and run that thing here as we're going through some of these numbers.
Yeah, so 46% of all matches, that's 23 out of 50 matches over the weekend, ended via submission. And we ran the numbers. There were 10 chokes, 4 arm locks, 8 leg locks, and as we mentioned earlier via Grace Gundrum, 1 twister. That's pretty cool. Did you expect to see as many chokes? And because everybody's talking about the leg lock game in no-gi nowadays, right?
Yeah, I think especially Who's Number One has brought out kind of a range of diverse submissions, right? You can't just go for the leg locks. If they're not working, you have to do something else. And I think that's given us the opportunity to see a lot of different submissions, face cranks, calf slicers. William Tackett hit the very first calf slicer in Who's Number One history. A lot of different attacks that we're happy to see.
Very well rounded, right? I think a lot of people a few years ago might have thought the leg locks were a fad, but really they're just one more.
They're here to stay.
They're here to stay, but they just open up all the other areas of the game as well. They're just one more weapon to force people out of position, make mistakes, and you can go anywhere, whether take it to the back or just force a positional exchange where you come out on top due to a leg lock attack. I mean, they're not just a one punch weapon. They are utilized in the system. And here we see
the twister, the Swedish twister, apparently, as the 10th
go ahead and explain what that is, Hal.
It just depends on the arm positioning around Grace's back. It's an extra secure method of securing of getting that. It's just a variation of the twister. But I just want to run through some numbers quickly that the championship performances that Tai Rotolo was the champion who spent the least amount of time on the mats, a total of 35 minutes and 20 seconds across 3 matches, taking 2 submissions and a cool $33,000 in prize money home with him. The athlete who spent the longest time on the mat was Maisa Bastos, 3 wins by decision, a total of 60 minutes of match time over the weekend. That is a long, long time to be grappling. But speaking of the amount of time that people spent on the mats, when we looked at the numbers and we saw the kind of the mean times here of how long it took to get submissions, because we had Tubby's submission over Jessica Khan via toe hold in only 42 seconds, and then you had the longest match to end via submission was Rafael Aguedi's tapping out Kendall Rusing with a guillotine in 18 minutes and 54 seconds. That was deep into the 30-minute match, but 5 submissions came inside the first 5 minutes of action. 12 submissions came between the 5 and the 10-minute mark. And then 5 submissions came between 10 and 15-minute mark, and only 1 final match went longer than 15 minutes. So and ending by submission. So I think it's interesting that sort of seems to be the sweet spot for which to expect the submissions between the 5 and 10-minute mark.
Interesting. I would love to do a full analysis of every WNO event, which I'm sure will come shortly.
We got the stats.
We have the stats.
We got the stats.
We have the charts. We have the data. We can do this. But maybe there's something to that, Hal. Maybe it's a global trend.
You know the most common submission of the weekend? The inside heel hook.
Powerful weapon.
4 of them over the weekend, yeah. And the next most common submission was the Das choke. 3 of those.
Who hit those?
All performed by the Rotolo brothers. Kate got 2, Tai got 1.
Do they have an instruction on? I kind of want. I need to know those details, like ASAP.
I guess they do. And about the Rotolo brothers, now they've moved into a very illustrious position in Who's Number One rankings, right?
Yeah, that's right. They are both tied for the most victories in Who's Number One history. Cade stands out as the most consecutive victories in Who's Number One history with 6.
6 in a row. 6 wins in a row in Who's Number One matches. That's pretty cool. We saw some real standout moments in Who's Number One, and we'll put all that information together into a nice big article where you can go check it on FloGrappling.com and see some of the other cool stuff that took place over the weekend. We have one more thing to talk about before we get out of here. We got to get out of here. We got things to do. But we cannot leave without discussing the return of Gordon Ryan on October 20th at our Who's Number One event. WNO, Wednesday, October 20th, our first ever mid-week event. Don't miss this one, because Gordon Ryan's going to come back and he's doing an exhibition match against the UFC fighter Philip Rowe. Exhibition match, what does that mean, Chase?
It means we're going to see a lot of jiu-jitsu. The match does not end if a submission takes place. It just gets reset on the feet and they go again. It's just basically a live training round. And what that's going to do for me is you get to see how Gordon thinks and trains and learns. He's gonna probably go to some positions that he wouldn't do in a real match where everything was on the line. He's gonna explore some new ideas, new submission chains, and I think he's gonna just see what Philip Rowe has to offer him.
Well, okay, so this is cool concept, right? So it won't go on anybody's record. This is not an official result. And Gordon has already said that if there is a submission, then they restart in a neutral standing position. So it's the clock keeps going, and they just, we can have as many or as few submissions as might happen in that 15 minutes, but it's just one long training round. But I don't feel it's going to be a training. It's going to be competitive.
Well,
I can't imagine that Philly Fresh,
that
Philip Rowe is going to come out and just roll over and let Gordon do whatever he wants.
If you remember Philly Fresh's performance at WNO against Cody Steele, you would remember that he's a very physical fighter, super aggressive, also a
Big
bit of an
guy.
entertainer, a showman,
Oh,
right?
yeah,
And
definitely
so
a showman,
he's
yeah.
going to do his best to dismantle Gordon the way he can. This is a shot at the champ. Even if it's an exhibition match, if you get the better of all those exchanges, I think that's worth something.
Absolutely, yeah. And I also feel that Gordon, he's a very smart guy, and he's made no secret of the fact that he uses his matches to promote sales for his upcoming technique instructionals. He used his match against Wagner. He used his match against Roberto. He used these various matches to showcase techniques right around the time that he was ready to drop these instructionals. It's like just pure genius, pure marketing genius. And I'm absolutely certain that he is going to be using this match, this exhibition, as an opportunity to showcase something special that maybe we haven't seen before. Exactly what that is, let's wait and see. But that's not the only match that will take place on the Who's Number One event on October 20th. We also have 2 title matches on the line, with Beatriz Mesquita taking on Luisa Montero in a 135-pound title match, and Natalie Ribeiro taking on Fionn Davis, making her Who's Number One debut. A long-awaited debut. We've had a lot of fans asking us to get Fionn on our
We've been
shows,
trying.
right?
The pandemic made things a little tricky.
Travel restrictions and such, but yeah.
Exactly. And as much as I'm excited to see Gordon back doing his thing, these are the matches that really matter. And it is going to be a real treat for fans and me personally to watch this high-level jiu-jitsu go down.
We're going to crown champions in the 125 and 135-pound divisions for the women. And we'll also have many more matches to be announced very soon, including maybe even some big names coming through to compete on October 20th. You'll be able to watch it
going to
live.
tease something a little bit
Nah,
more.
you're going to have to wait and find out. But you can watch it all live right here on FloGrappling, October 20th. And between now and then, we have other events. We have IBJJF World No-Gi coming up very soon. We also have EUG. And then early November, we've got ADCC Trials. We've got BJJ Stars. And don't forget that we got Masters Worlds in November. We got the IBJJF Heavyweight Grand Prix. And in December, we've got IBJJF World Championships as well. It is just non-stop from here through till the end of the year. Absolutely tons of stuff coming. Don't forget, you can apply to be part of our upcoming reality TV show. Details still on the wraps, but we are accepting applications. The casting call, go to flowsports.tv/reality show. We're looking for male no-gi grapplers to be part of our upcoming reality TV show project. Details coming soon, but this is a chance for up-and-comers to make their name and enter a very cool initiative. Go there, submit your application, hopefully join the fun. We'll see you guys the next time.